Welcome to Footnotes. I'm Deanne Conrad, Community Relations Supervisor with the Sioux Falls School District. Thank you for joining us on K-Learn for Footnotes. This is an in-depth discussion on issues facing students, parents, and taxpayers in the Sioux Falls School District. And this month we're giving you a behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to build a school. The district is in the process of building its 24th elementary school near the area of 57th Street and the T. Ellis Road. If you've been out in that area recently, you know there is considerable growth out there, lots of homes and streets going up out in that neck of the woods, and so it was time for us to consider a new school on that side of town. So in the next half hour, we'll be talking about how the district determines where the new schools are needed and how attendance areas are decided. We'll also talk about what goes into building the physical school building, how a school building is named, and finally what considerations are necessary when staffing a school building. And the folks joining me for this discussion today are very well versed on building new schools in the Sioux Falls School District. I will have each of them introduce themselves. Bill?
I'm Bill Smith. I'm the Director of Instructional Support Services.
I'm Pam Homan, Superintendent of the Sioux Falls School District.
Fred Adderhold, Assistant Superintendent for the Sioux Falls School District.
I'm Jeff Kreider, Director of Operational Services for the Sioux Falls School District.
And these folks have been around the block a couple of times when it comes to building new schools in Sioux Falls, so this is a well-tested pattern that we've had over time. Dr. Homan, let's start and talk a little bit about the growth in the public schools this year. We're pleased with the number of students that showed up on the first day of school and continue to be with us.
Well, you know, we anticipated growth and planned for growth, but we certainly were pleasantly surprised when our first day and into first week enrollment numbers came in a little over 300 student increase. And we certainly felt that and saw that on that west side when you look at the enrollment numbers of our Discovery Elementary has probably about 815 students as we speak, JFK approximately 780, and Oscar Howe increasing as well. So we knew that we needed to look to where we were headed a few years ago, and fortunately we believe we're on the mark.
Let's talk a little bit about how numbers are determined from year to year. While we were surprised that 300 showed up, we do some planning and projection to look to the future. And Bill, you're very much involved in those projections for enrollment. Talk to us a little bit about what goes into that process.
Well, we have a process that we use to first collect information that's important to us. We use data from live births in the county from 6 months or 6 years, 6 years earlier. And also we have a formula that takes into account people moving in and out of the district, open enrollments from outside the district, and then what happens from year to year with a particular grade level. We plug all that together and we do 1 through 5 year projections, and then we also apply that first of all by the district, and then we do that by school so that we have projections. And as we look at that southwest part of the city, we have about 2,100 kids right now. Next year we would have about 2,200 in that same area, and the following year 2,300. We have a capacity in our schools, if we were running all our programs equitably, gave art, music their room, and kids no more than an average of 24 in a classroom, we should have about 1,800 kids out there. So when we open that new school, it's going to be just a matter of a year or two, and we're going to be bumping up there to filling that school up.
That growth has certainly happened. We've seen it in different pockets of the city, and we work very closely with the city in determining where those growth areas are going to be. We meet with the city planners regularly to understand where developments are happening.
Yeah. We work with them. We do a couple things with city planners. We look at what the approved residential developments are, and they've got a plan, a 5-year plan, or even longer. I think they're in the 20-some plan now. But they have planned development areas, but they also, along with that, is areas that are under development. We get the numbers of houses that are anticipated in those areas, and we have a formula that we've derived from looking at our number of students we get from homes after those developments have completely filled, and we can use that to determine, what we're going to anticipate needed in space by putting together the kids we have plus what we anticipate in the future as we're doing long-range planning.
Right, and really growth is a wonderful problem to have.
It's an absolutely wonderful problem to have, and as Bill was speaking, I was reflecting on thinking many times especially in my position or our positions as in leadership roles in the district, we spend a lot of time dreaming the future and then to create that future. But this is one area where we have to do our best to forecast the future and look at the indicators we have to try to best determine where and when we need to build.
That on the east side, a couple of years ago, they opened Rosa Parks Elementary, so we noticed there was some growth over there in the 26th Street area. So obviously looking ahead and determining that that was an area of need as well.
And of all of our elementary schools, this year alone, Rosa Parks experienced the greatest growth, about 70 student increase over last year. So we definitely believe that we planned that school appropriately.
Absolutely, in a good spot there, and
Yes.
knowing that there are so many students on the west side, another good spot for a school as well. What goes into finding a location for a school? Jeff, I know you're heavily involved in going out and scouting areas around the city that that might be a good location for a new school.
Well,
building.
once Bill starts doing some projections and giving us some ideas of what needs to be done, we work with the Parks Department and planning and trying to identify where their future growth is going to be and where there's land available that we can obtain 10 to 20 acres and work in conjunction with the Parks Department, because most of our elementary schools that we've done in the last 15, 20 years has been in conjunction with a neighborhood park. So we work closely with them and start developing those relationships right away, and it's 2 to 3 years prior to even turning the ground. And once we start doing that, we look at utilities, where the utilities are, where the sewer, water, electrical, and all those pieces are going to come together, and we can't be too far out because we don't have utilities to service the building. So those are things that we do up front before we even start looking at what that building's going to look like. And
Well, and Jeff, over time it's become more challenging because as the city of Sioux Falls grows, our district does not grow with it. So for instance, Rosa Parks, our newest Southwest Elementary, and in a handful of years from now the Northwest Elementary are certainly on the perimeter of the school district, and it becomes harder and harder to acquire and find that land. And so it becomes quite a process of contacting and negotiating and discussing to see what options are out there.
I think that's probably a good point to maybe give a little bit more discussion to that piece, that just because the city of Sioux Falls is growing larger, the boundaries were set long ago, and those boundaries do not move. So even though the city expands outside of the Sioux Falls School District boundaries, our boundaries as a school district do not follow the city of Sioux Falls.
In the 1980s, the state legislature froze school district boundaries. There are two ways they can change. One is through joint agreement with between school boards. Another is with petitions from people who live in that area and any developers that are working in that area. Once there's children in the area, they can join together and petition the area. And fortunately for our school district, we've had some of those instances occur where we've been able to continue adding some area to the school. As school officials, we believe it's the right thing for kids who live in Sioux Falls to go to the Sioux Falls School District.
And for schools to be equitable also across the district, so that you have the new school and the old schools, the older schools in the city. Every school has and students have the same opportunities within those buildings as well, and that's an important part in the process too. Correct?
Exactly. I know over the last 6 months to 7 months, and I don't know why, but there has not been a week that someone from the outside or someone who necessarily isn't employed by us doesn't contact me or reach out to me when I'm out in the public to comment us on the condition of our facilities and really how proud we should be because of the way in which they're maintained and the equitable efforts we make to make that delivery. And I commend Jeff and his entire team of people for what we look like today.
But it really stems back to the mid-90s when a community group put together the capital improvement plan, and they looked at all our facilities, passed the bond, and we embarked on getting all our facilities equitable, across from the oldest to the newest, so we didn't have a big disparity, and we had great support from the community for doing that. So
we're reaping the benefits today.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, when it comes to, let's go back out visually to that 57th and T. Ellis Road location. Lots of of housing going up there, some apartment complexes and things like that. So we know that there's a huge need out there for that school. Talk to us a little bit. You said planning starts 2 years before ground is even turned. And when the building starts going up, that's when people start identifying that, oh, there's going to be a building there. We've known that for a long time, but that's where it sort of starts generating excitement among parents and students, I think, that there might be a new school building. But what's happening as far as the construction phase right now?
Well, the streets are going in or around the perimeter. The building is coming out of the ground. The gym and the music rooms, they're putting bearing walls up with anticipation that the entire building will be enclosed before the first snowfall. I mean, we're on target for that, and they're going great guns out there.
Sure.
But, you know, I kind of go back to the beginning is that first, you know, when we identify the site and get the site bought, we have to find out what we're going to build. And we've had the opportunity to do some plan reuse over the last 3 years. You know, Discovery, Rosa Parks, and now Southwest, which will be named sometime soon, is a plan reuse. And we've saved, you know, several $100,000 by doing that. And what we try to do is tweak it a little bit to see if there's anything. And we've come to the conclusion that it's a great plan. Everybody really likes it, and that's why we've been able to do that. And so it's kind of an economical thing for us as well, and it also can get it out of the ground quicker when we need to.
Well, and Jeff, am I correct, for instance, in that plan between Rosa Parks and the Southwest site, probably one of the most significant tweakings, if you will, are the solid walls versus the partial walls between those classrooms?
I mean, Rosa and Discovery had movable walls between the classrooms. Found
They
out
cost
they
more,
never get used, so we removed them. So we have that ability to get feedback,
Sure.
you know, and make those little changes.
Make it
We
better.
made some changes to casework and, you know, some door locations from Discovery to Rosa, and now we've made additional changes. So
Right.
it's really kind of interesting to see what the feedback is and make those changes, so it's a better facility in the end.
All right, and we're encouraging our staff to give us that feedback too, which
Yeah.
is empowering to them. Well, you've heard us refer to the school now a couple times as a Southwest Elementary. That's not going to be its official name. We will actually give the school building a name, and Dr. Adderhold, part of that is a bit that you work on to some degree. What is the process for naming a building? We called it the East Side Elementary before we knew it as Rosa Parks, and now we're calling this the Southwest Elementary, though that will not be its name.
Oh, it won't. It's a process that happens pretty quickly. Actually, in November, the board will appoint a committee comprised of parents, teachers, administrators, any community folks, and they will solicit names. Oftentimes, they come from other students, kids that might be going to that school, and they have to meet certain criteria, the names, and I'm just going to read these so that we make
We'll
sure.
allow that.
It says the name for the school shall be selected from the following categories: Presidents of the United States, persons who have achieved distinction in such fields as art, literature, music, education, or science, individuals who have made a significant contribution to society, the location of the school, for example, Discovery.
Sure. Discovery.
Discovery, but also that was part of the Lewis Clark edition,
Sure.
expedition too, and the space shuttle, I think, Discovery.
Right.
Location of the school, its street or direction, and famous event or location. So those are the criteria. And
And I think, Fred, the other pieces the policy speaks to, the name needs to have withstood the test of time.
Right.
Exactly.
So we're just not willy-nilly picking something out of the air.
Yes.
Here, it's got to be something that means something, which if you look at the schools we've previously named, they're well named. Washington, Roosevelt, Lincoln, Joe Foss, obviously folks that have made wonderful contributions either nationally or locally as well. So, so good direction. And that naming takes place.
well, the committee will begin work in November, and I believe that's announced probably in January of 2009.
So there will be much
there will be
going
identity
on with
associated
that.
with it.
So yeah, we'll refer to it for a couple of more months as a Southwest Elementary, and then we'll know a name. And that's exciting, I think, for people to know and start identifying with that building and where their children will be going to school in the future as well. So a good step on that one. Also, let's go back to the construction phase of it a little bit. Once we get farther into the process, and what goes into everybody just thinks, oh, the building's going up, and then they show up the first day of school, and oh, it looks like a school in here. But there's quite a bit that goes on as far as getting the equipment necessary over there. Is equipment transferred from one current school building to another, or is new equipment installed, or how does that all work, Jeff?
Well, I mean, the construction process is a quite lengthy process, and there's huge amounts of inspections and testing and those sort of things that happen throughout the construction process to make sure it is being done correctly and it's going to be a good quality school. The city will, at the end of it, will go through with the fire department, the mechanical inspections, the electrical inspections. We'll be doing final inspections to make sure everything is exactly, and we do that throughout the process, but there will be a final one to make sure we have occupancy. But as it's being built, we're also doing other things like identifying, working with department heads and identifying what every piece of equipment that's going to go into each room and get those things out for bids and developing those standards. So we know what there needs to be desks, but there's also easels, there's also everything else that goes with it.
Right down to the whiteboard markers.
Yeah, the paper and the slides will, the principal that come on board and will do that, but we work with the principal, to make sure the colors, are selected properly, and we have lists by room what actually is going to go in there. So
we do, though, move some things from the schools from which these students are coming, because if these students assume they're all in the district today, so they all have a desk someplace today, and they all have textbooks today, so we try to be as efficient as possible in moving those types of movable features and curriculum items
Along
to
with
that
the
school
students.
from the school the students left.
Right, because if there was an overabundance of students in one school and they went to that other, there's no need
Yeah,
to
we have no intentions of having Discovery remain at 815
No.
students.
and no need to have
That's-
815 textbooks there or whatever.
Absolutely. So
In fact, we want all of those schools on the west side to get those numbers down below their capacity so that there's room for growth and open enrollment for people who maybe have daycare in an area,
Right.
things like that.
Absolutely.
each,
Another.
each
go ahead.
item that we list is either new or existing, and that's identified through that process.
Sure.
So.
Another interesting part of the process is naming a principal, and we've recently done that. Dr. Adhold, do you want to tell us a
Yeah,
little bit
we're
about
pleased. Julie Hartman, who is currently principal at Robert Frost, was we announced at the September 8th board meeting will be the principal at the new school. And Julie brings great experience to the elementary program, and she's very excited to get started in this whole process. There's a great deal of excitement about opening up a new school, a new staff and building a new culture and new students, and so she's really excited to get started with that.
Let's talk about staffing a new school building. Do you go out and hire all new teachers? How can people choose to move to a new building? How does that all work?
Yes and no. We'll, once we determine the size of the school, we'll know how many staff members we need there, and that generally happens sometime in January. And then we post those positions open for internal applicants only. So anybody in the Sioux Falls school system that's currently teaching can apply for those positions. Julie, and I'm sure she'll have some other people that will work with her, will select a staff for that school. People that come from within our own school district. We know that as we downsize in Discovery and some of those others, that we'll have some teachers that'll need to actually probably, maybe some of them might end up at the new school, some may end up in other schools within the district, but we assure that everybody that's teaching will have a spot somewhere in the fall.
Right, and exciting for, unless you don't like to move, that's my position when I get somewhere.
And I think, as Fred mentioned, there's many moving parts that have to come together. We don't know. We have a projected size of number of students for that school, that until Bill masterfully leads the boundary process, then at the end of that, we look at our existing enrollments, our future enrollments, impact on the new boundaries, and really decide, we believe that school will open with X number of students. That's when we run the ratios to determine how many staff we need to move in there for that first year.
Right. We've talked about now the kind of the details of the construction and staffing, and I think what many parents are asking the question is, will my child go there? What are the boundaries going to be? And so I wanted to save that discussion to give a little bit of extra attention to that, to talk about the boundary planning process. And it is a lengthy process, but one we take very seriously. And recently the school board approved some priorities as far as determining what the boundaries should be. And Bill, if you'll just walk us through what that process is and how parents can become involved in the process.
Sure. Well, we have a process that we've tested over time that seems to work well, that involves school staff members, parents, community members in certain portions of that. We've gone to our school board and laid out a timeline, and also they've approved assumptions that we would use initially and drawn potential boundaries that we might use. In October, we'll go to the leadership teams at each of the 3 schools that are involved, that potentially could be involved in the shift at Discovery, Oscar Howe, and JFK. And the principals will have representative teachers and other staff members as well as parents on that. And we'll talk to them about the process and ask them if they have any particular items that they might have for us to consider as we look at drawing up potential options. We have a computer program that we can use to determine where our students live, and we'll use that to look at sizable areas that we could move in that seem to make sense geographically, natural boundaries, safe paths to school are all things that we would look at as we move kids into new boundaries. And then we will come forward in November to the school board and suggest here are some options that we see. And then perhaps the school board might have some suggestions for us at that point. But we'll also send a newsletter home to parents then that announce the 3 boundary meetings that we'll be having in December, where parents and community members would have an opportunity to come and interact with us about those. And we have a set agenda we follow at those meetings. They'll be held December 1st at Oscar Howe, December 2nd at Discovery, and December 4th at John F. Kennedy School. They start at 7 o'clock, last approximately an hour, and we'll share the potential boundary changes, hear suggestions or comments from them. We take what people tell us seriously. I can tell you when we set the boundaries for Rosa Parks and the middle schools here a couple of years ago, we had 7 community meetings at that time, I think. And at those meetings, we heard from a number of people, and we did make some modifications to our options based on that. Then that goes back to the school board in January. The school board will approve the boundaries at that point. Then we will notify parents of those, and then we start in a transition planning process to help students and staff members and parents, because adults have challenges with change too, help them through that process to prepare to open the new school.
Hearing and having been at some of those meetings in the past, there's a good dialogue that takes place, and something we encourage from the public to be able to participate in the process. Some people might have the idea that we come in there and there's just we're going to do option 1 or option 3 or whatever, and really it is an open discussion. People can make suggestions, and we'll seriously consider them.
Well, we benefit from having multiple eyes look at what the options are. And I think it's also important that sometimes some people may think, oh, a public meeting, there could be a lot of people. I may feel intimidated to go and speak, and so we also offer people to please come and listen and see. And if they're not comfortable speaking, of which we capture word by word, anything, recommendation that comes forward, we allow people to submit it in writing. So we look forward to that because, you know, we don't have a crystal ball, and we certainly do our best, but we don't see everything all the time, and others might bring a different look to it. So
engaging the public is an interesting,
very important
part of that process. Very good. As far as opening up a new school, there are so many details that go into it, but that first day is always so very exciting. And Fred, I don't know, you were former principal. Did you ever open a new school?
You know, never had the opportunity to open a new school. Yeah, you think of that first day and the first time people gather on campus and what sort of rituals and ceremonies that you might tie to that, and how you really start to try to build the culture. And I know teachers and Julie, they'll be meeting before school, and they'll be working through a lot of those procedures and things that you need to get in place to get off to a good start. And all of that is the beginning of a culture, and it's a very exciting opportunity.
One of the ways we help prepare for that is through the transition process that we go through. we'll have representative people from each of the schools involved, plus the new school and the principal and a team of people from there that will plan things like, when do we organize the PTA? Newsletters that will go out and they to the people who are going to be in the new boundary. Planning time for kids to come and visit and parents to visit. And also what kind of special activities that may happen on that first day, but most likely before. In the last few schools we've opened, the principals and staff have done things well before the opening of school to make that school community come together. And at the same time, it's not just about the new school, it's also about the changes at the schools where we move those kids from. Those will be different school communities too, and we expect that there will be activities to help people work through those changes also.
I know in the past, students who were on the upper end of the elementary spectrum were maybe given the opportunity to finish in their existing school. Do you expect that to be a consideration?
Typically, a part of that transition is helping parents prepare and students prepare for who's going to the next school and who can stay. And typically, we've been able to say kids who have finished 4th grade at that school may continue through the 5th grade year. And then if parents would like siblings, younger siblings, to go to continue at the school where they were attending as opposed to the one that they've been assigned to now, they can go through that open enrollment process. Of course, that's subject to having space available and program space for whatever program that student might need that they're requesting open enrollment for.
We have a unique and wonderful challenge in the Sioux Falls School District, and that is every parent and child loves the school they attend. So change is difficult, and that's why we work very carefully through that transition process, because everyone they're excited about a new school, but boy, they really feel good about where they're at.
Right,
and
absolutely.
so we need to bring comfort to that process, and we try hard to do that.
Right, very good. There are other pockets of growth in the city of Sioux Falls as well, and the school district has looked further out down the line and has land in the northwest side of the school district as well. How are things going? Right now we're just kind of holding
We just know that
that
that is land we've acquired, it's there, and we'll be able to react and prepare when the time comes that the population demands bring us to that corner.
Okay, and that's up near the Southeast Tech campus. Also up in that neck of the woods in the future, folks will see some other construction going on with the Career and Technical Education Academy, which is also another very exciting project that we have for our high school students who would like to participate in career and tech ed programs that are currently across the district. Talk a little bit about the concept of bringing that under one roof.
And as you're bringing that up, we probably could do an entire footnotes on that
think we
topic.
probably
We might have just burst the next subject.
I think we probably can.
We are in the process, Jeff, working with the architects to get the original design and schematics for the building. We've got the principal identified for that facility will be Jim Kale, and he's working with so many community partners in identifying program types and styles, as well as neighboring school districts who will tuition their students into the facility. So it's an exciting new day for us when we think of career and tech ed.
Absolutely.
And it is different because we don't have a prototype. This will be a new prototype.
Exactly.
And we're spending a lot of time, getting the schematic design right, making sure all the program pieces are right. And that's the process. We're bringing in staff and people throughout to identify and get the right designs.
And a very similar process will go into that building as will this new Southwest Elementary School. We're running out of time here. I want to remind folks again that December 1st at Oscar Howe Elementary, December 2nd at Discovery Elementary, and December 4th at JFK Elementary, all starting at 7 p.m. They can come and hear the proposed boundaries at that time and offer their input. Parents and guardians, any interested citizens may attend. All of the information presented at those 3 meetings will be the same information, and so you're welcome to attend any or all of those if you wish. Watch for more exciting things happening in the Sioux Falls School District. Thanks for joining us on Footnotes.